What you're looking at appears to be a female inmate seducing a prison officer. But when the prison saw this other video of another female inmate cheating on her husband with another prison officer, they began noticing a pattern, and the truth was shocking. Jodi Arias. It all started at a network marketing conference in 2006. Jodi Arias meets Travis Alexander, and from that moment on, their lives take a sharp turn, mostly for the worse. What began as a casual meeting quickly turned into an intense and complicated relationship. By 2007, they were officially dating, but simple was not in their vocabulary. Jodi was so determined to fit into Travis's life that she even converted to the Mormon faith to win his approval. But while she was trying to impress him, she was also keeping secrets, like the fact that she was cheating on her boyfriend with Travis. By 2008, their relationship was over, at least for Travis. However, Jodi refused to move on. She packed her bags, left California, and popped up in Arizona, uninvited. She even started showing up at Travis's house like a ghost that just wouldn't take a hint. And despite the breakup, they continued their physical relationship because bad decisions were clearly a pattern. Travis's friends saw trouble from a mile away. They worried about Jodi's obsession with him. One friend even joked that Travis might end up chopped up in her freezer. On June 4th, 2008, Travis Alexander was found brutally murdered in his Arizona apartment. Jodi, being the ex who still acted like they were together, quickly became the prime suspect. At first, she claimed she was on a road trip when it happened, but things fell apart fast. Investigators found a damaged digital camera in Travis's washing machine, and the photos on it told a story that no one expected. First, there were intimate pictures of Travis and Jodi. Then, things took a dark turn. Bloody images that placed Jodi at the crime scene. Suddenly, her road trip alibi wasn't looking so great. At first, Jodi denied being there, then switched her story by saying that masked intruders attacked them both. When that didn't work, she finally admitted to killing Travis, but insisted it was self-defense. The evidence, however, said otherwise. Throughout the investigation, Jodi's behavior was all over the place. As more proof came out, DNA, photos, her story changed, like she was testing out different versions to see which one might stick. At trial, Jodi's attitude only made things worse. She showed no regret and even smiled in her mugshot like she was posing for a new profile picture. The jury wasn't amused, and that's how she was convicted of first-degree murder. On April 13th, 2015, Jodi Arias was sentenced to life in prison without parole. At first, she claimed she would rather get the death penalty, but later changed her mind and asked for life in prison instead. Even after her conviction, Jodi kept doing interviews and throwing out contradictions like she was trying to confuse everyone last time. Today, Jodi is serving her life sentence at Perryville State Prison in Arizona. She has worked in the prison library and taken on other jobs to keep herself occupied. However, her time behind bars hasn't been without its challenges. In 2016, she got into trouble for disrespecting prison staff and was ordered to pay $32,000 to Travis's family for the trial costs. Despite being convicted, Jodi still tried to appeal her sentence in 2018. The court took one look and immediately rejected it. Her life sentence remains. Even though Jodi Arias' trial was all over the news, the next story is even more messed up than you can imagine. Kelly Hufford. The betrayal began with Kelly Hufford, a 45-year-old elementary school teacher from Fort Campbell, Tennessee, whose life was anything but simple. She was cheating on her 53-year-old boyfriend, Jimmy Dean Boyer, with her lover, Frederick Persinger. But things took a dark turn when Kelly decided she wanted Boyer gone, and not in the breakup sense. Instead of just walking away like a normal person, Kelly, Persinger, and their friend Corey Knight cooked up a plan to kill Boyer, and they actually plotted it out. Persinger and Knight followed through and brutally beat Boyer to death. As if that wasn't horrifying enough, they set his body on fire. His remains were discovered in May near Clarksville, Tennessee. Investigators didn't need to be detectives of the year to figure out something was off. Suspicion quickly fell on Kelly, Persinger, and Knight. Kelly's charges piled up quickly, making it clear just how deep she was in this mess. Knight faced an equally grim list, including kidnapping, murder, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. While he was held without bond, Kelly somehow secured her temporary freedom with a $150,000 bond, but that didn't last long. In the end, both were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Now, here's where things get strange. Persinger, the guy who actually helped commit the murder, never even faced trial. Due to mental health issues, he managed to slip through the cracks and avoid conviction entirely. As for Kelly, she tried to appeal her conviction and claimed the court had no right to try her. The judges took one look at that and shut her down in an instant. While Kelly's case was a twisted mix of betrayal and violence, the next story takes manipulation to an even more chilling level. Pamela Smart. For over 30 years, Pamela Smart's name has been tied to one of the most infamous crimes of the 1990s, the shocking murder of her husband, Gregory Smart. At the center of it all was a betrayal that seemed straight out of a crime thriller, a high school media coordinator manipulating a 15-year-old student, William Flynn, into carrying out the unthinkable. The case has been picked apart by courts and the media for decades, but Smart's personal journey, one filled with reflection, denial, and acceptance, adds another layer to the story. Now 56, with nearly 34 years behind bars, her life sentence has been the setting for what she claims is a personal transformation. And in a recent turn of events, she has finally admitted what she once refused to, her role in her husband's murder.
In those spaces is where I found myself responsible for something I desperately didn't want to be responsible for, my husband's murder.
And while some manipulate to get what they want, the next person on our list threw everything away for love, even her job and freedom. Emma Webster. You've heard of inmates finding love in prison, but what about the prison officers? At HMP Lincoln, Emma Webster took rule-breaking to a whole new level and practically rewrote the handbook. Falling for not one, but two inmates, she turned the prison into her own personal love story. If this were a movie, it'd be a wild drama with unexpected plot twists. Emma's first prison romance was with an inmate named Bradley. They had 17 phone calls filled with flirty chats, but that fizzled out pretty fast. Instead of reflecting on her choices, Emma moved on. Just 8 days later, to another inmate, Jimmy. This time, things escalated. She sent love letters, signed your future wife, and even sent an inappropriate picture. They ended up talking on the phone 75 times. Naturally, prison staff started putting two and two together. A suspicious new number popped up on Bradley's contact list under Emma Smith, and Emma seemed to have an unusual interest in Jimmy's well-being and even switched shifts to be closer to him. When confronted, she played it cool and insisted her thing with Bradley was just friendly, and her situation with Jimmy was totally not romantic, though no one fell for it. Once the truth was out, Emma lost her job and her reputation and spent 14 months in prison. Quite the plot twist. Emma risked everything for love, but the next officer takes inmate romance to a whole new level. Pamela Dickens. In June 2003, things at the Colorado Territorial Correctional Facility were about to take a wild turn. Pamela Dickens, a corrections officer, was secretly breaking all the rules. By day, she played the role of a strict officer. By night, she was having an affair with inmate Rick Hampton. It wasn't long before the staff got suspicious. There was a lot of heavy breathing and way too much playful roughhousing. An internal investigation started, and when Hampton was questioned, he didn't hold back. He spilled everything like it was a confession scene in a crime show. Turns out, Pamela had a whole plan to get rid of her husband for a $250,000 life insurance payout. The idea was to collect the cash and ride off into the sunset with Hampton once he got out on parole. A bold plan, but not exactly a smart one. Detectives started listening in on Hampton's calls, and things only got worse. Not only was Pamela serious, but she had already bumped up the insurance to $1 million. Hampton even joked that they should time the murder for his birthday, and Pamela seemed totally on board. She even brushed off concerns about her two daughters and said, "They'll get over it. That was all law enforcement needed." Detective Wayne Louisa stepped in, going undercover as a hitman and arranging a meeting with Pamela in Denny's parking lot to lock in the deal. She showed up thinking she was about to finalize her grand plan, only to end up in handcuffs instead. And just like that, her double life came crashing down. Pamela risked it all for love, but at least she had a plan. But the next person threw away her career for just a little fun. Shaniah Beum. Ever wonder what really goes on behind prison walls? Most people expect inmates to break the rules, but sometimes it's the ones in uniform who stir up the real drama. Meet Shaniah Beum, a 25-year-old prison officer at HMP Birmingham, who took supervision to a whole new level. Instead of just patrolling the cell blocks, she was sneaking an inmate into private areas under the official excuse of checking in on him. Though it wasn't about work at all, it didn't take long for staff to notice something was off. The frequent supervision sessions raised suspicions, and soon an investigation was underway. Turns out the rumors were true, and Shaniah was caught red-handed. She was arrested on October 3, 2022, and when questioned, she decided to stay quiet. Unfortunately for her, the evidence did all the talking. Charged with misconduct in a public office, Shaniah faced serious consequences. Her lawyer tried to soften the blow by highlighting her personal struggles, caring for her sick mother and sister, plus the pressure of an arranged marriage. While those were real challenges, they didn't erase the fact that she had broken the law, betrayed her role, and even cheated on her partner outside prison. In the end, Shaniah pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 16 months behind bars. A fitting reminder that when it comes to the law, no uniform comes with a free pass. Though Shaniah gambled her career for a forbidden romance, but at least it didn't cost any lives. But the next person on our list took things a little too far. Vallow. Some love stories end in heartbreak, and this one ended in multiple deaths. Not exactly a romance novel, but the story of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell proves real life can be way scarier than fiction. Their shared obsession with doomsday prophecies led them down a dark path, and let's just say their version of saving souls had a terrifying twist. Lori wasn't living the usual married life. While still with her husband, Charles Vallow, she was also romantically involved with Chad Daybell, a family man with his own life. She was so committed to this affair that she moved from Phoenix to Idaho, conveniently getting closer to Chad before her husband was even out of the picture. That move set off a series of tragic events. In 2019, Charles was shot and killed by Lori's brother, who claimed self-defense. No charges were filed, but this was only the beginning. Lori and Chad's beliefs took a sinister turn as they became obsessed with the idea that some people were zombies possessed by evil spirits. And in their twisted logic, the only way to save them was to get rid of them. Sadly, Lori's own children, 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow and 16-year-old Tylee Ryan, became victims of this horrific belief. Chad's wife, Tammy Daybell, also didn't survive their so-called mission. Prosecutors argued that Lori and Chad plotted these murders to be together and benefit financially. In 2023, Lori was sentenced to life in prison for her role in the children's deaths, while Chad was given the death penalty for murdering his wife and Lori's kids. But it's not over yet. Lori still faces charges for conspiring to kill Charles and even her niece's ex-husband. 2 court-appointed doctors confirmed she's fit to stand trial, with proceedings set for February 2024. Lori's story shows how dangerous obsession can be, but the upcoming story reveals a different kind of crime that wrecked the entire prison system. Sarah Williams. Prison officers are meant to keep things in order, but Sarah Williams seemed to have missed that memo. Instead of maintaining discipline at HMP Alt Course, she found herself tangled in very unprofessional relationships with multiple inmates, no less. Back in early 2020, whispers started making their way around the prison about Williams getting a little too close to certain prisoners. What started as rumors quickly turned into a full-blown investigation when contraband phones, strictly banned behind bars, were discovered during routine cell searches, and guess who had been using them? With undeniable proof in hand, the case landed in the lap of the Northwest Regional Organized Crime Unit's anti-corruption team. It didn't take long for them to connect the dots, which led to Williams's arrest on July 8, 2020, on charges of misconduct in a public office. As the case unfolded, things only got messier. Williams had relationships with 3 prisoners, and one of them, Connor Crawford, was locked up for firearms offenses, making the situation even more serious. To make things worse, she also accessed prison systems without authorization, creating a major security risk. By December 21st, 2023, it was game over for Williams. In Liverpool Crown Court, she admitted to multiple charges of misconduct and unauthorized access to data. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, giving her a chance to see life behind bars from a very different angle. Detective Chief Inspector Chris McClellan didn't sugarcoat it and made it clear that relationships between staff and inmates wrecked the whole system. And since Williams wasted no time getting into trouble after starting the job, this was a disaster waiting to happen. While Sarah slowly crossed the line, our next officer jumped straight into a scandal that landed her in a viral mess. Linda Dusa Abreu. Life in prison follows a simple cycle: wake up, eat, survive, repeat. But on June 27, 2023 at HMP Wandsworth, that routine hit a scandalous plot twist when a prison officer got a little too close for comfort with an inmate. Linda Dusa Abreu is a 30-year-old officer who decided to spice up her shift in the worst possible way. Instead of focusing on prison duties, she got involved in an inappropriate act with an inmate, something that's definitely not in the job description. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, another inmate recorded the entire 5-minute encounter. Naturally, the video made its way to social media, where it spread like wildfire. It didn't take long for HMP Wandsworth staff to recognize Linda, and soon authorities were involved. Realizing just how deep she dug herself, Linda took the most dramatic exit possible by trying to flee the country. But before she could make her escape, the Metropolitan Police caught her at Heathrow Airport and shut down her getaway real quick. In a final attempt at damage control, she called the prison to officially quit and had her husband return her uniform. And speaking of her husband, turns out she was cheating on him during all this. But here's the real kicker. Linda and her husband actually ran an OnlyFans account together where they shared explicit content. With nowhere left to run, Linda pleaded guilty to misconduct in a public office at Isleworth Crown Court. The prosecution didn't hold back and made it clear that she had completely abused her position for personal gain. Tete Turkson from the Crown Prosecution Service called it a blatant betrayal of trust and warned that any officer caught in such a mess would face the consequences. Now, while Linda's scandal shocked the prison system, the next officer took workplace drama to an extreme level. Officer Megan Hall. A police department is supposed to be a place of discipline and order, but this particular story is less about law enforcement and more about absolute chaos in uniform. Megan Hall is a 26-year-old officer from La Vergne, Tennessee. While she was technically paid to fight crime, she was also busy starring in her own scandal. Megan was married to Jedediah, a pastor's son, but that didn't stop her from getting a little too close to another officer. And when an internal investigation started looking into that officer's conduct, they uncovered something much bigger. Turns out Megan was having relationships with multiple officers, and not just in her free time. Some of these encounters allegedly happened on duty. The details were not exactly approved. Megan sent nude photos to co-workers, got way too comfortable at a Girls Gone Wild themed hot tub party, and even engaged in inappropriate activities with 2 officers while still in uniform. The fallout hit hard. Several officers were fired, including Sergeant Lewis Powell, Officer Juan Lugo, Sergeant Ty McGowan, and Detective Seneca Shields. Meanwhile, Officers Patrick Magliocco and Larry Holliday managed to keep their jobs, but walked away with suspensions. To make things messier, Megan had apparently told her co-workers she was in an open marriage. The problem is her husband Jedediah didn't seem to get that memo. He was reportedly not thrilled when Megan kissed another officer's wife at a party, and he definitely shut down the whole idea. Beyond the relationship drama, there were concerns about Megan's mental health. Officer Patrick Magliocco mentioned that she had a history of heavy drinking, and in a more alarming incident, Megan once pointed an empty gun at her head and pulled the trigger just to hear the click. Megan's scandal shocked law enforcement, but the next story goes even further with manipulation and crossing all sorts of lines. Charlene. At the prison where Charlene worked as an officer, people started noticing something off between her and an inmate named Jason Parker. At first, it was just whispers in the hallways, staff gossiping about how Charlene and Parker seemed a little too friendly. But as it turns out, gossip is onto something. Charlene, who was married, denied everything. She even tried to pin the rumors on a jealous inmate named Coker, claiming he was making things up because she had blocked him on Facebook. She admitted to chatting with Parker at a window, but swore it was just small talk.
I guess a few years ago, we talked, and then I ended up here, and then he ended up here. I didn't know he was here. It wasn't anything like that.
Detectives weren't convinced, though. They had something stronger than rumors, recorded jail phone calls, and these calls painted a very different picture than the one Charlene was trying to sell. When confronted, she adjusted her story slightly, saying she had talked to Parker in the past, but nothing inappropriate happened while he was in prison, except the phone calls said otherwise. Turns out Charlene and Parker were getting into some very explicit conversations. Terms like game and popped up more than once, and suddenly her whole nothing happened defense started, looking really shaky. Investigators also asked about photos. At first, Charlene denied sending any, but when pressed, she finally admitted she had given Parker a picture of her mom and her dog. Not exactly the scandalous evidence detectives were hoping for, but it did make the whole situation even weirder. Eventually, the weight of the evidence was too much, and Charlene cracked. She confessed to certain activities with Parker, but insisted it all happened before he went to prison. Unfortunately for her, the recorded calls made it pretty clear that their relationship had continued well into his incarceration. Turns out not even prison bars could keep these two apart. And while Charlene's actions didn't cost any lives, Officer Jessica destroyed her friend's marriage and took her life as well. Jessica Simmons. Within the Phoenix Police Department, things took a dramatic and deadly turn when Officer Jessica Simmons got a little too interested in her partner Laura Mitchell's husband Nick. What started as an awkward love triangle quickly spiraled into something far worse: betrayal and murder. Jessica first met Nick at a dinner, and despite knowing he was married to her work partner, she caught feelings anyway. By early 2019, they started spending more time together, both socially and through work. One thing led to another, and by March, their just friends status had evolved into a full-blown emotional affair. Nick, unhappy in his marriage, confided in Jessica, which only deepened their connection. But instead of taking the normal route, Jessica let jealousy take the wheel. Watching Laura and Nick together was unbearable, and soon she started seeing Laura not just as a partner, but as a roadblock between her and a future with Nick. By late 2019, that jealousy had turned dark. Jessica began plotting ways to remove Laura from the picture permanently. In March 2020, during an armed robbery, she saw her chance. She shot Laura and staged the scene to make it look like a tragic accident. At first, the plan worked. The official report ruled it as an unfortunate case of crossfire, and Jessica and Nick bonded even more in their shared grief. But the cover-up didn't last. Investigators started noticing red flags. Ballistics reports didn't quite add up. Jessica's behavior seemed off, and surveillance footage raised too many questions. Eventually, the truth unraveled. Jessica was arrested, charged with Laura's murder, and ultimately sentenced to life in prison. As for Nick, he was left to deal with not only the loss of his wife, but also the ultimate betrayal from the woman he had unknowingly trusted in his grief. This was not the love story Jessica had planned. While Jessica's jealousy led to betrayal and murder, this next person took things even further by plotting to have her own husband killed. Valerie Cinelli. In 2019, NYPD officer Valerie Cinelli and her husband Isaiah were in the middle of a messy divorce. But instead of just signing some papers and moving on like a normal person, Valerie allegedly had a slightly more extreme idea, hiring her boyfriend, John Dusa, to take Isaiah out. Instead of handling the divorce the usual way, she reportedly took a much darker and dangerous path, planning to have her husband killed. To keep things secret, she even decided to pay the hitman with $7,000 worth of gold. The plan completely fell apart because Isaiah never actually died. Instead, he was secretly working with the FBI in an undercover sting. They even went as far as staging a fake murder scene, complete with photos of Isaiah looking very much dead in a car. Valerie fell for it entirely, reacting in a way that prosecutors described as cold and carefully planned rather than shocked or grieving. But it gets even darker. Before the FBI even got involved, Dusa exposed everything and revealed something even more disturbing. Valerie had allegedly thought about getting rid of her own 13-year-old daughter out of jealousy. Isaiah, who had been married to Valerie for 5 years and shared a son with her, later called her a cold-blooded person and a crazed lunatic. Meanwhile, Valerie desperately tried to erase evidence from her phone during the investigation, and that did absolutely nothing to stop the FBI. In the end, she pled guilty to obstruction of justice. After the murder-for-hire charge was dropped, she was sentenced to 48 months in prison, while Dusa walked away without any charges, and Isaiah admitted he still feared for his life, just in case Valerie ever decided to finish what she started once she was free. Valerie's plot may have failed, but the next story features someone who became infamous for murder: Florencia Beneck. Florencia Bambi Beneck became infamous after being arrested for the 1981 murder of Christine Schultz. Christine was the ex-wife of Beneck's husband, Fred Schultz, and she was accused of pulling the trigger. In 1982, she was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Before all this, she had an affair with Fred while still married to her first husband. Then, in a plot twist straight out of a crime thriller, she escaped from Techita Correctional Institution in 1990. She managed to stay on the run for 3 months before getting caught in Canada. While behind bars, she fought to clear her name and argued that new ballistics evidence proved the murder weapon wasn't her husband's gun. Meanwhile, in 1983, she filed for divorce after finding out Fred had moved on. Their divorce was finalized in 1984, proving that drama followed her everywhere. Her personal life was eventful. She was rumored to have had a romantic connection with fellow police academy trainee Judy Zess before her affair with Fred. After being released in 1992, she settled in Vancouver, Washington, taking on various jobs. She married Marty Carson in 2005, but that marriage didn't last either. They divorced in 2007. Later in life, Beneck faced a mix of health problems, including hepatitis C and liver and kidney issues. There was also a lawsuit tied to an injury from an alleged escape attempt. She maintained her innocence until she passed away in 2010, leaving behind a legacy that was equal parts crime, controversy, and chaos. Florencia's life was full of drama, but the next person on our list just needed one decision to ruin her life: Jessica McClary. A former prison officer's career took a sharp turn after allegations of an inappropriate relationship with inmate Levi Weeks came to light. Jessica McClary finds herself on the wrong side of the law and faces charges of misconduct in public office. Between October 25th and November 4th, 2023, while still working at the prison, Jessica and Levi exchanged more than a small talk. They were passing love notes, which is exactly how their secret got exposed. But Jessica had a lot on her plate. She had a law degree, was a mom, and had been working at HMP Berwyn for 6 years, so she definitely wasn't a rookie. And just to add another layer of drama, she was also cheating on her partner at the time. With these allegations hanging over her, Jessica is now facing a serious charge. She's currently out on bail, but will be back in court next month for a pre-sentencing hearing at Mold Crown Court. This whole situation has left people wondering what exactly is going on behind prison walls. The investigation is still ongoing, so who knows, there might be more surprises in store. That's a wrap for this video. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you love digging into the dark and unexpected side of history, click on the screen right now.